The crowd roared like thunder in Madison Square Garden that night in 1971. 20,000 souls, each one leaning forward in anticipation, their collective energy charging the air with electricity that made the hairs on your neck stand at attention. In the center of it all stood Muhammad Ali, his chiseled body glistening under the harsh lights, every muscle taut with the kind of power that had made him a legend. His eyes, those piercing, calculating eyes, locked onto his opponent with an intensity that had broken men before a single punch was thrown. This wasn't just any fight. This was Ali's comeback after his title had been stripped away for refusing the draft. 3 years of his prime, gone. 3 years of watching others claim what he believed was rightfully his. The anger that had been building in him was palpable, radiating from him in waves that even those in the nosebleed seats could feel. If this story has already made you feel something, no matter how small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to show the world what happens when you try to cage the greatest, Ali had declared at the weigh-in, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had been wronged and was finally getting his chance for redemption. The crowd believed him. They had seen what Ali could do when he was fighting for glory. Now they were about to witness what he could do when fighting for justice. In the opposite corner stood Joe Frazier, undefeated and undisputed. The man who had claimed the throne in Ali's absence. The man who represented everything that had been taken from Ali. As the bell rang, signaling the start of round 1, the world held its breath. What followed was not boxing, it was warfare. Each man landing blows that would have felled lesser opponents. By round 13, both fighters were exhausted, but Ali's fury seemed to have only intensified. His footwork, once described as floating like a butterfly, had become deliberate, predatory. He wasn't dancing anymore, he was hunting. The crowd sensed it too. There was something different about Ali tonight. The playful showman had been replaced by something darker, something dangerous. As Frazier backed into the ropes, momentarily dazed by a combination that had slipped through his guard, Ali saw his opening. He raised his right hand, cocked and loaded with every ounce of anger and resentment that had built up over those 3 lost years. The punch that was coming wasn't just meant to win a fight, it was meant to exact revenge. It was a punch thrown from the darkest corners of a champion's soul, a punch that might have changed everything. But then, in that millisecond between intention and action, Ali's eyes drifted past Frazier to the crowd. There, pressed against the barrier separating spectators from gladiators, was a boy no more than 8 years old, his small face streaked with tears, his eyes wide with fear as he watched the violence unfold before him. The boy had somehow made his way to ringside with his father, a devoted fan who wanted his son to witness greatness. Instead, the child was witnessing brutality that his young mind couldn't reconcile with the hero his father had described. Ali's fist froze in midair. Time seemed to stand still in Madison Square Garden. For 3 heartbeats, Muhammad Ali remained suspended in that moment of decision. His fist, capable of delivering enough force to concuss a grown man, hovered just inches from its target. The crowd's roar faded to a dull hum in his ears as his focus narrowed to the tear-streaked face of the child at ringside. Something shifted in Ali's expression, a subtle change that only those watching closely would have noticed. The hardness in his eyes softened, like ice giving way to spring's first warmth. In that instant, the fearsome fighter remembered who he truly was, beyond the titles and the bravado. A man who had once promised his mother he would never let his talent corrupt his heart. Ali lowered his fist slightly and adjusted his stance. When he threw the next punch, it was controlled, technical, still powerful enough to score points, but devoid of the vengeful fury that had fueled him moments before. The remaining rounds became a masterclass in the sweet science of boxing rather than a street fight disguised as sport. After the final bell, as the judges tallied their scorecards, Ali made his way to the corner of the ring nearest the boy. Leaning through the ropes, he gestured for the child to approach. The boy's father, recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary, lifted his son up to meet the champion. "What's your name, little man?" Ali asked, his voice gentle despite his exhaustion. "Michael," the boy replied, his voice barely audible over the crowd's continued commotion. "Well, Michael, did you know that real strength isn't about how hard you can hit?" Ali said, wiping away one of the boy's tears with his gloved hand. "It's about how much you can care." Before Michael could respond, Ali was called back to the center of the ring for the decision. The fight was awarded to Frazier by unanimous decision, a loss that would have once devastated Ali. But as he left the ring that night, his focus wasn't on the defeat. It was on the small exchange with a frightened child who had inadvertently reminded him of something essential that he had almost forgotten in his quest for vindication. The press would later call this match a turning point in Ali's career, not because of the outcome, but because of the restraint he showed in those final rounds. What they didn't know was that this restraint was born in a single moment of connection with a child named Michael Williams, the son of a factory worker from Brooklyn who had saved for months to afford those ringside seats. What no one could have predicted was how this brief encounter would alter the course of both their lives in the years to come. 6 months after the fight, Muhammad Ali was training at his camp in Pennsylvania when a letter arrived. The handwriting on the envelope was childish, the stamp slightly crooked. Inside was a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures, one tall with boxing gloves, one small holding the bigger one's hand. At the bottom, in careful letters, "Thank you for not being scary," from Michael. Ali remembered the boy instantly. He read the return address and, on impulse, decided to respond. He dictated a letter to his assistant, encouraging Michael to do well in school and to always stand up for what's right. "The greatest victory," Ali wrote, "is the one where nobody gets hurt." This began an unlikely correspondence between the greatest boxer in the world and a child from Brooklyn. Michael would send updates about school and neighborhood baseball games. Ali would respond with stories from his travels and simple life advice. When Ali learned that Michael was struggling with bullies who mocked his stutter, a condition Ali himself had battled in his youth, he arranged to visit Michael's school. The assembly was supposed to be a surprise, but news traveled fast when Muhammad Ali was involved. The entire school buzzed with anticipation. When Ali walked onto the stage, the children erupted in cheers, but he raised his hands for silence. "I'm not here to talk about being champion," he announced. "I'm here to talk about being a human being." For the next hour, Ali spoke about his own childhood struggles, about the power of words, and about finding strength in kindness. He didn't dance or throw shadow punches. Instead, he recited poetry and demonstrated how he had overcome his stutter. When he called Michael to the stage, the boy who had once been ridiculed received a standing ovation. "This young man," Ali told the crowd, "taught me something important. He reminded me that our actions always have an audience, and sometimes that audience is watching to learn how to be in this world." After the assembly, as Ali was preparing to leave, Michael tugged at his sleeve. "Will you come meet my mom?" he asked. "She's been sick, but she's your biggest fan." Ali changed his plans and followed Michael home to a modest apartment in a run-down building. There he met Sarah Williams, a single mother battling multiple sclerosis who had been forced to quit her job when her condition worsened. Despite her pain, her face lit up when Ali walked through her door. "I can't believe you're in my living room," she said, trying to sit up straighter in her wheelchair. Ali spent hours there, listening to Sarah's stories, helping Michael with his homework, and even preparing dinner in their small kitchen, a scene so domestic and ordinary that it would have shocked those who knew him only as the bombastic champion who predicted rounds and proclaimed his own greatness. Before leaving, Ali pulled Michael aside. "Your mother is the real champion in this house," he said. "But the way she fights every day without giving up, that's the kind of strength I admire." What began as a chance encounter at a boxing match evolved into a genuine friendship. Ali began to include Michael and Sarah in his life, sending them tickets to fights, checking in on Sarah's health, and becoming a mentor to Michael, who blossomed under his attention. The boy's stutter gradually improved, his confidence grew, and his grades rose steadily. 2 years later, when Sarah's condition deteriorated further and medical bills mounted, Ali quietly arranged for her to receive experimental treatment at the Mayo Clinic. He never mentioned this to the press or used it to enhance his public image. For him, it wasn't about publicity. It was about honoring the connection that had begun with a moment of compassion in the ring. 1984. The Olympic torch made its way through the streets of Los Angeles, passing from hand to hand as it journeyed toward its final destination. Among those selected for the honor of carrying it was Dr. Michael Williams, now 21 years old and a medical student at UCLA. As he jogged his designated route, the flame held high above his head. His thoughts were with two people, his mother, who had passed away 3 years earlier, and Muhammad Ali, whose friendship had shaped the trajectory of his life. Ali, now 52 and battling the early stages of Parkinson's disease, watched from the stands. His once fluid movements had become stiff, his booming voice reduced to a whisper. But his eyes, those expressive eyes that had once locked onto opponents with such intensity, still sparkled with the same spirit that had made him not just a champion, but a humanitarian. As Michael passed the torch to the next runner, he looked up to where Ali sat and gave a subtle nod. It was their private acknowledgement of how far they had both come since that night in Madison Square Garden 13 years ago. Later that evening, at a private reception for the torchbearers, Michael sought out his mentor. They embraced, communicating without words what had become difficult for Ali to express vocally. "I chose medicine because of you," Michael finally said. "Not because you were the greatest boxer, but because you showed me that strength could be gentle, that the same hands that could throw a punch could also lift someone up." Ali smiled, the effort visible, but the warmth genuine. "You were always going to be somebody important," he replied, his words careful and measured. "All I did was remind you that it's not about the fights you win, but about the people you help along the way." What neither of them could have anticipated was how their story would ripple outward, touching countless lives beyond their own. Michael would go on to specialize in neurology, dedicating his career to understanding and treating the very disease that was slowly claiming Ali's body. His research, funded in part by the Muhammad Ali Foundation, would lead to breakthroughs in treatment protocols that would improve quality of life for thousands of Parkinson's patients. Ali, despite his declining health, continued to use his global platform to advocate for peace, religious understanding, and human rights. He visited war-torn countries, met with world leaders, and stood up for the marginalized, all while battling a disease that would have kept a lesser man confined to his home. In 2001, when Michael opened a free clinic in Brooklyn to serve the community where he had grown up, it was Ali who cut the ribbon despite his advanced Parkinson's. The clinic's mission statement, framed in the entrance, read, "Real strength is measured not by what we can take, but by what we can give." Their friendship, born in a split-second decision in the ring, had created a legacy that extended far beyond either of their individual achievements. It had become a testament to how a single act of compassion can alter not just two lives, but countless others through the ripple effect of influence and example. On June 3, 2016, when Muhammad Ali took his final breath, Dr. Michael Williams was among those at his bedside. As the world mourned the loss of a sports icon, Michael grieved for the man who had taught him that the measure of a life is not found in championships won or money earned, but in moments of kindness offered when no one is watching. Or perhaps, as in their case, when the whole world is watching, but only one pair of eyes truly matters. At Ali's funeral, attended by heads of state and celebrities from around the globe, Michael was asked to speak. He approached the podium carrying a worn piece of paper, the original crayon drawing he had sent to Ali all those years ago, which Ali had kept and returned to him in a frame on his medical school graduation. Muhammad Ali could have been remembered solely as the man with the fastest fists, Michael began. See, instead, he will be remembered as the man with the biggest heart. I know this because when his fist was raised to strike, but he saw a little boy crying at ringside, he chose compassion over victory. That choice changed not just my life, but the lives of everyone I've been able to help because of his influence. In the years that followed, whenever Michael was asked about his remarkable career or his friendship with the legendary boxer, he would always begin the story the same way. It started with a punch that was never thrown. If you made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in my hand to reach people like you who feel, who get emotional, who live. If this truly touched you, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.